Good afternoon, and welcome to Expose Yourself to Art, a show that explores the depths of the human creativity responses by inviting artists in to talk about their lives and their work. My name is David Schrader, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Linda Scheller. Come on in, Linda. Say hi.
Hey, everybody.
How you doing today?
Very well. How about you?
Good, good. See, I was just thinking, today we have Sam Pierstorff, Modesto's famous poet, with us today, another creative word person. A couple of weeks ago, we had Ken White on, a writer. You're a poet.
Yep.
And one of the things that popped up in my head is you folks who write, do you also read? And what kind of things do you read? What kind of things have been important to you in your reading?
Oh, currently I read a lot of nonfiction. I just finished Erasure by Percival Everett, which is just astounding. But yeah, I started reading early. I loved books as a child. And here's one that meant a lot to me. This is Bambi by Felix Salten, which was written in 1923 in German originally. But this is my original copy, Linda C. Scheller, 16 Larkin Street, Scotia 2, New York. So this is pre-zip code, but it's so beautifully written. It's very poetic, and it just, there are chapters and images in here I never forgot, and I think that kind of set the stage for then moving into the world of poetry. How about you? What do you read?
Well, luckily, I just recently got a book that I can talk about. Usually I just read junk. I read a lot, but it's mostly mysteries and spies and action stuff. But I just happened to come across this book. Just bought it. It's called More Than a Rock, and it's written by Guy Tal. And he's a photographer like myself. And one of the reasons this book is so important, and I would recommend it to a lot of photographers, is that he spends a lot of time thinking about and talking about the art of photography and separating it from the purely technical aspects by which most photography is evaluated. The book opens with a quote by Edward Weston. This then, to photograph a rock, have it look like a rock, but be more than a rock. And that's what the book is about how you express yourself creatively with this very technical art form. But enough about that. We need to get on with our guest today. Let me read you a little bit of his very impressive biography. Sam Pierstorff received his Master of Fine Arts degree in creative writing from CSU Long Beach and went on to become the youngest poet laureate ever appointed in the state of California when he was selected to the position in 2004 by the city of Modesto, where he currently teaches English at Modesto Junior College. He is the creator of the Ill List, California's most prestigious annual poetry slam competition. And for more than a decade, he has hosted Slam on Rye, a wildly popular monthly open mic event. As a performance poet himself, he won UC Merced's Slam in 2014. He has published more than 200 poems in literary journals, including Rattle, Clarion Review, Slipstream, and online at the Huffington Post and the Normal School. In 2014, his autobiographical story about growing up Muslim in America was selected as the opening piece in an anthology called Salam Love. And he was subsequently invited to Harvard University to read and perform his work. Wow, that's impressive, and he lives right here among us in Modesto. So we have a special introduction for Sam. So Linda, play it. Let's bring Sam in.
This is me not acting like a 44-year-old professor of poetry, that's for sure. What's up, American Ninja Warrior? This is me, Sam Pierstorff, poet and professor from Modesto Junior College, the Harvard of community colleges, if you will. I've taught here for nearly 20 years. This is my office hour. This is my office. I've got a class soon, so I've got to make this quick. But I've also got to do this on a down low because this year I'm not telling my wife that I'm applying to this show. I've got tremendous community support. Modesto is a town I love. It has embraced me for the last 20 years. But Modesto doesn't have to live with me. And so I love and respect my wife so much. But when I bring up American Ninja Warrior, at 44 years old, she cares about me and getting hurt and acting like a teenager. And so she is the string and I am the kite, and she just has to make sure I don't hit the sun. And that's why we work. We've got 3 kids. I'm a poetry teacher here, so I inspire young people every day. I get them in touch with their feelings, man. I think that is the challenge of a lot of people, but especially young men and boys, is connecting the heart and the head. Like, that is a problem. And so poetry helps do that. Anyway, I'm going to give it one more try. I love the show. It has inspired me. I'm 15 pounds lighter than I was the last time I applied. I'm stronger, I'm faster, and I'm older. How is that possible? It's because attitude is everything and consistency matters. And I'm just going to keep pushing and trying to succeed on this show and in this life until the day I die, which should not happen soon, by the way. God forbid. But anyway, this is my video. Flash of yellow, lying slightly below the skin. Winding like a halo in a spiral around your head. It's like a bomb inside the bomb. It's like a bomb inside the bomb. It's like a bomb inside the bomb. Linear, like an onion, always peeling back again. See.
Hey,
Who is that guy?
what an intro,
Wow.
man! Who is this guy? Is that serious? You're going to do American Ninja again?
That was my audition for last season, and they did not select me. So you're on notice, Ninja Warrior. But I've applied every year for about 6 years. 38, 39, 41, 42, 43, 47 years. And I've gotten on twice. And then, so about 100,000 people apply. So, and there's about 600 spots. So as they say, you know, in the Academy Award world, like, just being nominated, like if you just get a chance, you know, you feel pretty special, even if you don't win or do well. So, but I've gotten 2 chances. I feel blessed by that. But the actual application season is right now, and I'm actually waffling. Maybe by the end of this broadcast, I'll figure it out. I don't know if I want to do it again. I feel like my life has shifted a little bit. I'm still strong and physical, but it's quite an ordeal to train and drive to some of those gyms in the video.
Of course. So, but this year is different in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And we've been asking everyone who's come on about how the pandemic has affected your life, your work.
Yeah.
I imagine it would even affect applying for the Ninja Warrior.
Yeah, they filmed it was a whole mess running the show last season. But in terms of my own creative life, I have a two-part answer for you, Dave.
Okay.
I think our school shut down in May, January, February, March. No, I'm sorry, March. Middle of March, we got the call. Everybody's got to just stop coming to class, learn to teach online. It was kind of a mess. But it was also sort of fun in a weird new way. Everybody was home. The kids were home. We were, trying to make the best of it. We're eating dinner together all the time. We're playing catch outside. I was like, this is great. It's like we all got a vacation. But then, weeks became months, and it was less exciting and less new. And, I kind of crave a little bit. I don't know if you can tell, but I sort of like being, among the people in the classroom, talking to students. Like, I definitely do my best teaching in person. And now I'm just online, how are you? Everything okay? It's hard. And between that and some family stuff, I just kind of fell into a big funk, I would go so far as to call it a depression. And I wish I really understood how I got out of it, but something just kind of clicked, something just clicked. Weeks had gone by, I gained weight. I just had no motivation. I felt a little hopeless and really down. And then, I actually started running a little bit, just going on jogs. And I realized that the exercise that I was doing was far less about trying to lose those 6 pounds of quarantine weight and had everything to do with getting your mind off your mind and getting out of the house and getting some vitamin D from the sun. And I just started doing that, every day. I would just go on runs and I wouldn't worry about pace. I would just go. And, I usually go about 4 or 5 miles, and that was huge. And then the second half of the story is when I came out of that depression, I just went hard. I went hard. I started a podcast. I started 2 podcasts. I started doing TikTok videos. I started just writing more, creating more, writing jokes. I've been a machine since then, and I've just been operating with such a sense of urgency. I turned 45, and I wasn't happy about it.
Come on.
I know. It's all perspective.
Yeah, you're so young. Yes.
It's all perspective. But for me, it just didn't. 44, 43, 42, I don't know. All those numbers seemed fine. But 44 to me felt like I was at the pinnacle, like at the peak of the mountain, And so I'm operating now with greater urgency than I've ever operated. It's like, I don't know if I have. And also, I don't want to have the most depressing, broadcast you've ever had, but there are too many stories every day of people who, don't make it past 30, 40, teenagers, and I keep reading these, whether it's the coronavirus or a freak accident or a heart attack or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, you just don't know. And for me to continue to think, oh, I've got 10, 20, 50 years left. I'm like, I might not have an hour left, So I have decided that I'm going to create and create and create. So it gives me great joy. It makes me feel really good about my day, but also it's going to leave some shit behind. Sorry. I'm doing a Ninja Poet podcast, and it's largely like an audio book, but I sort of feel like, my daughter or my son, whatever, in their 30s and 40s and 50s, they can go listen to that and hear their dad, And
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've been creating a
Back
lot.
up here a little bit, because we'd like to know a little bit about you. So I think Linda has some questions for you. In fact, I'm sure she does.
I do.
Who is this guy and where does he come from? Okay.
Yes, I'm especially curious about your own artistic journey your development and what inspired and influenced you as an artist.
Sure. I've told the story a few times, but I love telling it because I'm a community college teacher and I feel so strongly about, how great community colleges are for young people who are just trying to figure it out, and for returning students who thought they had it figured out and went, and they're back for retraining. And so I was that kid at 18, starting college and just kind of taking whatever, not 100% sure about my major. I liked math, I liked children, I didn't know what I was going to do. But long story short, I took a creative writing class. It was a screenwriting class, and it was just an elective, and it just met like some arts and humanities requirement. Kind of sounded interesting. And one of the things that we would do, he'd give us some kind of topic, and we'd have to write like a 2-character script. And then the next class period we'd come, and if it was my turn, I'd say, okay, hey, Linda, can you read for this part? Hey, Dave, can you read for this part? And they were totally cold readings of these scenarios and scenes that I'd created. So they didn't know what they were getting into until halfway through. And anyway, it was just hysterical to watch these actors who are just students, play a role, and then to hear like my words come alive and to see how they interacted based on my dialogue. It was exhilarating to create something and then see like the fruits of that creation right before my very eyes. And I was hooked. I was like, what else can I do with this? And then the next semester I took Intro to Poetry, Fiction, and Drama with the great Raymond Obsfeld at Orange Coast College. And it was just too much fun. Started writing poetry, short stories, and whatnot. And then I started looking up, and this is where the story gets interesting, kids. I thought, okay, well, what is this English major thing? What the hell am I going to do with that? And like everybody, I thought I would go teach. Because that's the joke, right? If you're an English major, what do you do? Teach? What do you do? Teach? What are you going to do with that? Teach? I opened up this book in the Career Center, and the title was, what do you do as an English major? And the first sentence is tattooed on my brain. The first sentence was, did you know that 95% of English majors do not teach? And I went, what? And then there's this long bulleted list of things from advertising, whole marketing world, and screenwriting and technical writing and pre-law and on and on. And I thought, wow, okay, so this closes no doors. If I become an English major, like who doesn't need a writer on stuff? Like who doesn't need a clear communicator? I think communication is probably the most important thing that we can learn. So I just became an English major after that. And then I discovered, it's a little cliche now, but I was in the Southern California area, and I went to Long Beach because I discovered Charles Bukowski, right? Charles Bukowski, who's a misogynist, a poet laureate of Skid Row, all kinds of bad. But his conversational style, his matter-of-fact style, his don't try style just opened my eyes to like, oh, poetry doesn't have to be, sonnets and rhyming and about waterfalls and love. It can be about the most, disgusting ways of living and bars and horse races. And there was no pretentiousness. And I was like, my style, like use your own voice. And so my dad, I'll forever be grateful for him, for introducing me to that poet who just allowed me to write in the voice that I already had and not in a voice that I thought I needed to have. And so so I just kept writing and went to grad school and MFA, and I became a teacher. Even though I didn't have to be. And in fact, just now I'm dabbling a little bit, kind of accidentally, in the freelance marketing world. I've been writing a few vision statements and some marketing statements for different branding companies. And it's kind of fun. It's like, there's a lot. When you listen to great commercials, I'm like, there's an English major behind that one. You'll see spoken word poems now, like become commercials. Yeah, so it's becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked a little bit about the need for creative expression. Could you elaborate on that for our listeners?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm still formulating my my philosophy for no particular reason. But I think for sure we need obviously food and water, and then we need shelter. And then we probably need love. We need to love and to be loved. And if we don't get it, I think we need to give it, right? I think we have the capacity to give so much love that we need to maybe start there, and then you'll get it. But then the fourth or fifth thing is creation. I think we are happy humans when we create something. And if we're not creating something for ourselves, I think we're unhappy. And that creation for me has been, writing. But for other people, that could be making jam. That could be doing a puzzle. It could be knitting, right? But there's something that we have to do outside of ourselves where we can actually like envision it and infuse into that thing that we create a little part of us and then like offer it to the world. And when we do that, there's just this tremendous sense of contentment and joy and happiness. And like, I'm ready to move on because our whole lives, I think, is largely, we live for other people. If you're a parent, you're constantly thinking of other people and helping them and helping, right? If you're an employee, you're constantly doing, what you're being asked to do. You're always working for other people, but it's only when we create something that we're really just doing it for ourselves. It's great when other people listen, read, eat it, but the joy of creating, I think, sustains us. And people who don't create or have nothing to create, I just think are genuinely less happy. And it's not because they can't create, they're just choosing not to prioritize their need to create, if that makes sense.
It does. It does.
So I think if you want happiness, you got to start with, well, what are you going to create?
Right.
And it could happen in the kitchen. It doesn't. My buddy Curtis, who I'm really upset with right now, long story, but he is the best cook ever. And his great joy in life is cooking and then sharing what he cooks with other people. Like, it's that simple. And when he can do that, he feels really happy. And when, because of quarantine and he doesn't have a lot of parties anymore, he's not very social, he's been really down. He needs to cook for more people. He needs to create more.
Well, you're talking to the choir here.
I know.
It shows all about creativity and all the different forms it takes. And so, So maybe we could take a look at some of the things that you've created.
Sure.
And put together, because you've done a lot for the town. I mean, your creativity spreads, influences a lot of people, and that's why we wanted to have you on. It's creativity works.
Yeah.
I guess I should put it that way. So let's take a look at some of the things that I think we have some pictures here, and maybe we can just
Sure.
Yeah.
Like a game show. You put up the picture and I say, what is that?
Yeah. Oh, well,
That's my logo.
Well,
Let's look at this logo for a moment here.
Yes.
Do you see the brilliant little pen? Do you see the little guy inside the fountain pen climbing to the top of that star?
Oh.
You've got to notice the visual design. It took great time and effort to get. That was actually my brother's idea. I had the fountain pen idea, and he said, "What if you had a little guy climbing up to the top?" And I thought, okay, that's a good idea. So that's been my mantra: write, work out, repeat.
Oh, it's a great one.
It's really good.
You designed it, or you're?
So no, I had a graphic designer design it, and I just gave him 1,000 notes. He was excellent, and we went back and forth. But the whole ninja poet thing, just to speak for a moment on this, like, for me, I think balance is such an important quality to have in one's life, right? When I grew up, I was a little bit of a jock in high school, and then I was quite the nerd in college, right? And so I kind of gave up like the sporty jock guy and then became like the nerdy poet guy. And then it wasn't until my late 30s where I'm like, hey, can I be both like a nerdy poet writer guy and still kind of be an athletic physical guy? And once I found that balance and have maintained that lifestyle since, like, I felt great, right? And so finding that balance in your life, physical and mental, I think is really key. So that's what Ninja Poet represents.
That's what it's about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've met other people. I worked with some athletes for a while who were also artists.
Mm.
And it was interesting that they spoke of the same thing, this balance between this kind of inner expression and staying physically attached to the world.
Yeah. I think it's kind of a crazy notion, but I think when you feel physically like powerful in a way, like it manifests itself in all kinds of ways. You know, I feel better about my writing. I feel better about my job. I feel better about meeting. It just really infuses my life with a certain sense of confidence and joy that's different than, you know, and it's not just because, you know, I lost weight or it's just, you know, my daughter, I've been taking her to the gym lately and I'm like that grunting guy at the gym, you know, I'm that guy. I'm that noisy guy. Oh, come on, one more. And my daughter's over there going, oh my God. Oh shit. You know,
That's great.
but when you yell like that, you're sort of celebrating life, not just the lift. You're celebrating life. So anyway.
So what do we have here? This Burn and Rave?
Oh man, this is my ridiculous new project that I just have so much fun doing. But Burn and Rave comes from the Dylan Thomas poem, one of my all-time favorite poems, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. And as I mentioned earlier, turning 45, you know, I just feel like, okay, the night, hopefully it's 50, 60 years away, but the night is coming and I don't want to go gentle into that good night. So Dylan Thomas says, do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So I said my buddy Ryan and I, that was one benefit of quarantine is he's a husband of one of my wife's friends. And he's a bit of an agoraphobic, introverted dude, but he would start coming over like once a month and we'd sit 6 feet apart and we'd chat. And our conversations just were so funny and so interesting. And I'm like, we should start a podcast. And so we did. And don't get too excited because it really is just two guys talking. Everybody's like, what's your focus? What's your topic? Who are your guests? I'm like, man, we don't do any of that. We shoot the shit for like 30 minutes and it's funny. And it's enjoyable. And we just burn and rave. And that's it. That's the podcast. And it's just been great to have an outlet. And with technology and quarantine and being home, I've learned how to like audio engineer a little bit. You know, we got our little microphones and stuff. You know, it's super fun. I feel like a kid, except at Treehouse, I have a podcast studio now.
So what have we got next here? The Ninja.
This is special to me. This is my second podcast that I don't think Ryan knows about. This is top secret, but I'm on TikTok, which is a social media app that is largely supposedly for kids, but when you get past the first layer of like dancing teenage girls, there is an abundance of extraordinarily creative, artistic people who are sharing their art, sharing their dance, sharing their music, sharing their poetry, sharing their DIYs. It's a fascinating app. It's really, really cool. But one thing you can do in that app is you can duet someone. And so you can basically have their video playing and then you can have your reaction to that video playing. And so a woman on there drew me. She as I was talking, she drew. So this was like a video and then she fully drew me. And this is like a screenshot from a video I did. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. It was kind of like fan art, you know, it was like first piece of fan art. And I just thought it was so neat. And I said, hey, can you write the Ninja Poet podcast? And this is really what I thought. That picture's so cool. I want to do something with it. And so I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to use that picture. And so about once a week, I just record a poem, just one poem. It's really kind of like an audio book and it's 3 to 5 minutes. I talk a little bit about the poem. I read the poem and then I say a few words after the poem. That's it. That's the podcast. So, but again, for me, it's archival. I want like a historic record for my kids to go, hey, let's listen to our dad. That's the chill.
What do we have?
This is either the chill list or the ill list. I think that's the chill list. So it's a team poetry slam competition that I hosted at the State Theater. Awesome.
Yeah, so this is one of your, what I might say, big creations that's affected all of us in town. Tell us a little bit about this ill list. I mean, it's been going on a long time. It's been very popular. It astounded me the first time I went to see all these people sitting around and listening to poetry and loving it.
I know. I'm pretty proud of that poetry slam. You know, I came in 2000 to Modesto, and about 2 or 3 years later, I started a small poetry reading at the Prospect Theater with about 25 of my students. Really, I had come from a very active poetry slam community, spoken word community, and then although there was poetry happening in town for sure, there wasn't any spoken word poetry, any slam poetry, the kind of poetry that really sort of, you know, got people amped up and moving and out of their seats. And the idea of a poetry slam is you hold up scorecards like the Olympics. And when Mark Smith conceived of this idea in Chicago in like 1985, he said he wanted to get poetry out of the library basements, right, and into basically the public. And he didn't think he needed a PhD to decide if a poem was good. And the word slam isn't people insulting each other. That's kind of a misnomer. It's, think of it as a grand slam. When somebody hits a ball out of the park, right, they hit a grand slam. And so poetry, it's that kind of slam. So we get 600 people packed into this great theater in Modesto, the State Theater, whoop, whoop. And we bring poets from all over the country now. We fly them in, we put them in hotels, man. They got $1,000 for first place. That was part of our team slam. Yeah. Feel free to scroll through these pictures as I ramble, but yeah, these poets, they just bring it. In our audience of 600, we bring in dancers to open the show. It's just been such an exciting show. And it really, I think the most interesting part of it is it opens up conversations because we don't know what the poets are going to say and we don't censor them. And you know, when there are things happening in our culture, like Michael Brown, you know, these Ferguson, these shootings and whatnot, our poets are bringing that stuff. And it's not always comfortable for Modesto, right? We have had people stand up and walk out, you know, in the middle of a poem, and that's okay. Kind of cool, actually. So I appreciate the diversity. What's that, Dave?
These pictures are amazing. I mean, the crowd shots, they're
yeah.
This a rock concert.
I know that one. This one is actually that's Andrew from that was a film festival at the State. My son won a student short film contest. So the State Theater is great. State Theater anchors downtown in an important way. What else is on there, Linda? Oh, this is the State Theater board. So I'm on the board. You could see me in the middle there, behind John Rogers, next to Jessica Godin. Yeah.
Okay.
State Theater was my first. This is more the ill list, Imani. Keep going. What else? This I miss. I miss seeing student faces, right? I celebrated 20 years. And actually, this might set me up. Linda, do you mind if I read a poem?
I'd be thrilled if you would read the poem.
I feel like it's poetry time. This class of graduates was pretty special, and I'm not sure if he's in there. I don't think he's quite graduated yet, but you saw maybe my Ninja Warrior clip. There was a kid who came. Actually, his friend came to me. It was adorable. 2 male friends kept coming to my, they were students in my class, and one friend, he had an obsession with arm wrestling. He wanted to arm wrestle everybody, and including me. And so his friend said, "Hey, my buddy wants to arm wrestle you, but he's too embarrassed to ask," because this was like the second week of class. And I said, "Hey, man, I can't do that. Let's talk in a month or something." Then he came back in a month and he said, "Can we arm wrestle?" I said, "Oh my gosh, all right, we'll arm wrestle." So this is me trying to decide if I should or shouldn't arm wrestle students. And if you want a poetry prompt for anybody who writes, I like to give a poetry prompt where I ask students to use the question as the title and then use the poem as the answer. So start the poem with a question and then answer it. So this is called Do You Want to Arm Wrestle? Yes, this is a classroom, isn't it? Nearly 27 college students of varying degrees of beauty and despair, returning adults and freshmen, shiny as pennies glistening in a fountain. They're all watching. And what kind of monster would I be if I didn't accept an invitation to unleash my biceps from underneath my tweed jacket? No, this is a classroom at a respectable community college in the heart of California's Central Valley. What we grow here is knowledge and empowerment, not ego, machismo. Please remove your elbow from my desk, unclench your fist, and open your damn textbook. Yes. Lately, I've felt the toxic pulse of my masculinity bubbling in my veins like soda through a straw, and it's about to overflow. And although my testosterone, like my bank account and my self-respect, is dwindling by the looks of you, I will only need a few good drops. No, my goodness, kid, I'm 25 years older than you. My spine is a Jenga tower, and every year God removes another block. Arthritis ads spam my inbox, ditto cholesterol pills and coupons for life insurance, because time is trying to murder me to collect for all the moments in life that I wasted. Yes, because this is obviously a moment in life that I should not waste. A story I will someday knit in my rocking chair while grandchildren play at my feet. I tell them about this day, about how you, such a sweet college boy, cocked your arm, slid your elbow onto the table between us, and wiggled your fingers as I laced mine into yours, which may very well be the only permissible way for men to hold hands. I will tell them how I finally accepted your invitation to arm wrestle in the middle of class in early October, when the leaves beyond the wet windows were just beginning to fall, but not nearly as quickly or as surprisingly as your arm did against the desk, as I smiled and watched the old rusty leaves of winter continue to dance in the wind outside. I did beat him. So.
Oh, that's great.
I was wrestling with my inner voice, right? The child in me who is constantly trying to escape. And then the man in me who's like, yo, dude, you're an old man now, chill, you're a professional. I'm always wrestling with that. I'm wrestling with my inner child. Is that okay? I don't know. Does it ever go away?
Yeah.
My wife and I were arguing the other day because she's mature, and I may be going backwards a little bit. That may be the consequence of quarantine. I may be reverting back to a little childlike state, and I'm not sure I care.
At this point, anyway. So
that's part of the beauty of aging, right?
Yeah. So moving on, what's up next here? You brought a bunch of things to look at.
Poetry class, my favorite poetry class ever. Yeah. This I think MJC and the administration is playing tricks on me every semester. They always seem to give me the tallest humans on campus. Now I realize I'm a short dude, but this one year I had 3 students. I mean, I'm 5'5". These guys are all like 6'5" or 6'8". And none of them, by the way, were like athletes, and I didn't, was in the basketball team. They were just like 3 dudes. And I'm like, we need to take a picture, man. So I love teaching. Believe it or not, and the reason that arm wrestling poem is fun to write to me is because I teach a lot about masculinity in my classes. That's one of my themes. And so I'm always talking about, arm wrestling and holding hands and strength and working. And then these guys, they always have opinions about, I tell them, like, there are certain ways to talk to women that perhaps women don't appreciate. And they're like, what are you talking about? Women love to be complimented. Like, well, we have these just great jostling debates. It's really fun. Which you can't have online. Yeah. I think it's important to give back to your community. And so I built this ninja course, and then I started doing ninja classes for kids for a couple weeks in June. I did that last semester. I was going to do it again, but COVID. So I might continue to do that. I love kids. I mentioned earlier that, my major in college, I was thinking about working with kids. I still love kids. I love working with kids. I think, and this is going to sound terribly depressing, but I've just witnessed too much of it. There's so much fatherlessness. You know what I mean? There's so much fatherlessness, and I see it in my high school I see it in my college students, and I see it in a lot of these young kids. Like, they're missing that father energy, which doesn't mean, moms can't be awesome, but some of these little kids, and even some of my college students, like, I can feel their energy and desire to be loved, to be felt proud of. Does that make sense? In a powerful way. And I try to give a little bit of what I can, but I have a finite amount of energy, but it's very powerful to see these young kids get really excited about something and their eyes widen as you say, man, you're doing so good. It's just a powerful energy. So give back to your community, people. There I am again. I was following a parade of VMI, Valley Music Institute. My daughter played drums on a float, so I was in charge of throwing flags out to the crowd.
All right. What else have we got here?
Well,
I recognize that.
I'm gonna read. Can I read this poem? It's short-ish.
Sure. Oh my gosh. Well, give the background to this.
Let's talk about it.
This is another one of your creations that I actually participated in.
Yeah. Well, was it my idea or was it your idea?
Well, I don't know. I called you up and said I was running this little photography gallery at the time, and we were looking for some way to entice people to come in. And someone said, call Sam. I'm sure he has an idea.
Right on. Yeah. In graduate school, I was in an MFA program, it's a Master of Fine Arts program. And so we were the MFA writers, and we teamed up with the MFA artists in other disciplines like ceramics and mixed media and photography. And they would just pair us up, and then, we would create something in writing, they'd create something artistic, and we had this beautiful gallery reading. And so that was the idea that I think I brought to Dave, like all these amazing, Modesto has, I think, an extraordinarily talented concentration of artists that is so powerful here. And of course, the Bay Area, LA has tons of art. They're spread out, and there's millions of we're like the Minute Maid frozen juice canister of art. Powerful, add water, and we blow up. And so we have such great photographers. I said, Dave, you bring the photographers, I'll bring the poets, we'll team them up, and we'll create this art poetry exhibit. And I think Dave called it Collision. And so it's become the Collision Poetry Art or Poetry Photography exhibit. So this was one, and Dave always gets in trouble for his sexy pictures. So, so in this poem, it just happened. This actually came from a student in class too, because I mentioned we talk about gender, so we talk about relationships. And one young lady in class, she's talking about her boyfriend, and he cheated on her, yada yada, and she was forgiving him. And then I don't know my place, so I cross all the boundaries, and I say, why would you forgive? Why would you not just cut that off and move on? You're like 18. Why are you holding on to this guy? And she said, well, it just happened. It just happened. That's
where the title came from. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is called It Just Happened, and this is my sort of response to her, although I never gave it to her. If he says it just happened, ask him if her hair unbraided itself, if her lips detached from her innocent face and suctioned his tongue like leeches before he had a chance to utter no. And if her low-rise jeans sank even lower, folding themselves like an accordion to the rug with no music playing, as she stepped out of each leg, one red-tipped toe at a time, because this just happened. Watch now, as her panties dissolve into ash and her bra unsnaps and flutters away like a butterfly through the window that frames the evening's wide-eyed moon. Then his clothes, see them unraveling, a tornado of thread spinning him out of his khaki slacks, his buttons popping off and clicking against walls until he too is bare, like Adam. But this is no garden. This is a second-story apartment that they just happen to be in, and there's spilled Merlot that poured itself, and the couch with arms that reached out and pulled them onto the cushions, onto each other. Maybe now. Stop thinking. Stop picturing his fingers skiing down her breasts, across her flat stomach, slipping inside her. Forget the straining pelvises, the sticky emissions, the cuddles after the long kiss goodnight. Just focus on the routine, the quiet drive home when he plots his fantastic tale down familiar streets where every turn is automatic and every road just happens to lead him back to you. Gulp.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know if she read that, but I think the point of that is to say, you got to know your worth, right? What is that quote? My daughter's now 15, and I've always tried to hype her up, but like when you're 15, 16, and boys like you have to treat people. Excuse me. You have to teach people how to treat you. Does that make sense? You have to teach people how to treat you. So my message to my daughter and some of the ladies in my class, I'm like, as soon as they're disrespectful, especially early on, like you can't ignore that, right? Like right then you go, nope, that's not how we're talking. That is not the relationship I'm having. I don't deserve that, and you won't be doing that anymore. And like right away, nip it in the bud. So don't just be passive. Anyway, so that's kind of the point of the poem.
Very powerful then, still very powerful today. Thanks for doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, collision remains one of the marquee, I call it cross-pollination, right? I think if I have a marketing tactic, there are poets who operate in silos and photographers who operate in silos and, watercolorists. There's all these amazing, but they're all in their own. So how do we, I got a call from the Townsend Opera once, and they wanted to do like a poetry opera fusion thing, right? I think the more ways in which we can kind of cross-pollinate, introduce poets to photography, introduce photographers to poetry, and I think we just build a better brand of art in Modesto.
Yeah.
So we need to do a lot more.
And thank you for being one of the creators of the Collision shows. We just did our 6th show.
Yeah, awesome.
It's popular. People like to participate, and
yeah, and thank you for sustaining it. I know that the last few years I've been less and less involved, but yeah, thank you for keeping it going.
Yeah. So I see on the screen here we have some pictures of your books.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's sell some books. No, I'm just kidding. Growing up in someone else's shoes was my one and only book, because, and this is a long time ago. I mean, that came out in 2010. And some of the poems I'm actually a little embarrassed about now, 10 years later. But, it took me forever to find a publisher. I did a lot of contests, and I was just not ready to self-publish. I just felt, damn it, I've got his degree. I've worked too hard. I've published too many poems. I can't just self-publish. I got to go this painful, long route. So finally I did. And now that I'm working on a second book, which sounds way fancier than it is, it just means I've just got a lot of poems that I could probably slap together and make another book. I'm trying to figure out, do I want to go back to a traditional publishing route, contest, or I just want to self-publish? Who cares? I don't know. But this was my first book, and growing up in someone else's shoes comes from a poem in the book where true story. You know, I grew up in thrift store clothes, you know, that's where we generally shopped for jeans. And if it was cold, that's where we got our winter jackets, you know? So that's what that poem's about. And that's what a lot of those poems are about.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
What do we have here next? More than
This was a really, really wonderful and important project. And I'm thinking we'll revisit it on the 20-year anniversary, which is coming up. But there are so many great poets in Modesto. And believe it or not, when you think of Central Valley poetry, Fresno is the city that comes to mind because of the Gary Sotos and Dixie, I forget her, Salazar, and there's just a Philip Levine back in the day. Like there's just a concentration of superstar poets who came from Fresno, and they had their collection. And so I was like, we need our collection. We need to memorialize Modesto poets. So with the help of Gillian Wegner and Stella Baratlis and Ed Bearden, all of us were poet laureates at one time or another. And with some photography by Doug Holcomb, we got 50 poets and put them all together, a couple poems each, took a nice black and white portrait and put this book out, and then marketed the heck out of it. And it actually launched to #1 in poetry bestsellers, and it cracked the top 100 in Amazon. And #1 that year was Steve Jobs and his autobiography. We had made it. We were right. My wife was happy about the book, but she didn't realize the impact until the book was sitting, true story, right between Hunger Games and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah.
Those two books, and then our book was in the middle of those two, like in the top 100. And my wife, who had read both those books and not our book, just kidding. She was like, "What?"
That brings up another question. You kind of touched on it before about how Modesto has this cluster of very, very talented people.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered the same thing, let's say specifically about poetry.
Yeah.
How did we become a center for poetry? I mean, I've never experienced this before in other cities in which I've lived. I mean,
Yeah.
do you have a thought about that? Have you ever?
You know, I came, and maybe Linda does. Linda's been around probably the poetry community longer. I've been around since 2000. There was already, I remember the Meter Maids. They still go in another writing group with Debbie Lloyd and George Rogers back then. Mm-hmm. There were some small writing groups already doing work, and the great Lee Nicholson was a pioneer. Lee Nicholson taught poetry at MJC for years, and in fact, the book is dedicated to him because he was, I think, one of the big great inspirations, you know, to a lot of young poets who stayed and remained in here. So I would trace a lot of it back to maybe Lee Nicholson. And then when I came, I brought, you know, the slam stuff, and I just sort of sprinkled a little bit of, you know, that seasoning on the poetry world. But Linda, maybe you can answer that. Is there a history here that I'm missing?
Well, I think a lot of it did start with both MJC and Stan State. I had excellent professors at Stan State, and so some of us just started getting together to share our poetry and talk about it. And then there was the Fools group. We're still meeting. And so, yeah, there's just been this continuous aggregate, I guess, of people who are expressing themselves and reacting to one another's creations. So, yeah, it's wonderful.
I think, and this is, you know, there's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called David and Goliath. And one of his chapters, he basically talks about the big fish, small pond theory and whether it's better to be, you know, he was talking about the Impressionists trying to get into the salon in Paris. Was it better to do that or to start their own damn thing, right? And we are big fishes in small pond, right? Modesto is a small pond, and you're an artist and you're a photographer. And I think what we do here is we don't wait for an exhibit and then apply to be a part of it. We go, well, let's just create an exhibit and let's showcase the artists that we have here, because that's what we do in a small pond, right? We make it happen. And if there isn't an exhibit for poetry in photography, then we have to create it. And if there isn't a poetry slam, then you can either drive to the Bay Area or you can create it. And so my attitude is like, let's make stuff happen here. I don't want to drive that far.
Yeah, and I want to credit you too, Sam. You brought in Wanda Coleman. I mean, we had voices that we were able to, sit down and hear, thanks to you and others who brought it to this small pond.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's been a really important, and especially in the last few years, my wife's been very involved in booking some of our poets. And, we really look to showcase a diverse range of voices, right? Male, female, black, white, gay, straight, like we want to hear from as many people and voices as we can and really diversify what we hear on the stage, and start conversations. And so thank you for saying that. I think it's really important. It's important work. One of the best quotes I heard from a California poet laureate, Al Young, he said, when you travel, when you go to a place, any place, what you remember the most about the place is the food and the entertainment, the food and the art, And so when people come to Modesto, like, I want them to go, whoa. One of the best compliments about the slam is, I can't believe this is happening here. Right?
Yeah.
What is it? Where am I? And they come out on J Street and like, what was that? Like, we want to give people this experience, this big city experience in this community, small oriented way. And I think it's just so much fun. I like Modesto. Cheers.
Well, yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yes, I fully agree. We have some great artistic groups, great artistic people here in town. And I like your explanation. I've been keeping track of time. We're almost out of time here. And, we usually end up with something silly.
Okay.
So a little quick fire questions here. Linda, you want to start it out? We just ask you and have you respond to whatever comes to your head.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay, Sam, what sound do you like best?
That's the question?
That's the question.
What sound?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh boy, I'll tell you, not Harley's going down McHenry. What sound do I like best? So my daughter plays drums, and you would think that having a drummer in the house would be extraordinarily annoying, but I love when those drums are banging in the house. That is the soundtrack.
Wonderful.
And I
So
love
let's do the opposite. What sound do you like the least?
Harley's going down McHenry.
Okay.
And it's November, and I'm still hearing massive fireworks. I mean, not like Diwali, like fire, like M80 dynamite booms. I feel like every night we have one of those. That's not okay.
If you could snap your fingers and be anywhere in space and time, where would you go?
Wow. Gosh. I mean, I'm going through a list of like beautiful tropical islands and whatnot, but hey, I'm going to give you the cliche answer, but I don't know that I would want to be anywhere than where I am right now in this garage talking to you people. I'm in the moment, man. I'm Eckhart Tolle, read The Power of Now. This is where I want to be. This is where
if you weren't a poet, if you weren't a ninja poet, what would you be?
I have actually thought about that. Two things. One is, I've thought a lot about law. Like, I think lawyers have so much power. If you understand the law, you can make. But I also think I'd be a kindergarten teacher. I love that grade so much. And then, I've been teaching for 20 years. Well, at MJC, 23 or so total. And I actually feel what teaching has given me, especially now during quarantine, is to explore other interests. And so I've been very clear with my wife, said, don't worry, babe, I'm not trying to like quit my job and be a podcaster. But, if things worked out, if fame and fortune came knocking, they're like, hey, Sam, we want you to do this show or that show. I did a comedy show. I did like my first like stand-up. Oh my God. I did like 10 minutes. It was pretty exhilarating, y'all. It was so much fun. And I had never been that nervous in my life.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I remember my first poetry slam or first poetry reading, and when there's a competition involved, but I was 44, it's just last October. But I kind of liked that newness and that fear and that anxiety. So pursuing something in that route, it's kind of goofy to say, I'm going to be a comedian, but I would like to pursue something in that world, that entertainment.
Okay. Sure.
So,
What's your go-to food?
Literally every day I make a gyro, and I make it with Beyond Burger fake meat. And it's delicious. So yeah, go-to is my Beyond Burger gyros that I make.
Okay. So, as an artist, what do you spend most of your money on?
This is the beauty of quarantine. I haven't spent money on crap. I would say this cycle, I've spent a silly amount of money on unnecessary swag, like this shirt, right? Like, I like swag. So, like, my buddy, I was like, hey, Burn and Rave. And like within a week, I'm like, business cards, mug. Hold on, it gets better. Notebook. And my buddy Ryan's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, but these damn websites, man, you go on there to make business cards. They're like, how about put your shit on a mug? How about you put it on a banner? So like, I've been spending silly money on silly things, but it just makes me very happy. I think I love pretending. This is Ryan. We love pretending that we're like a very big deal when we know we're not. It's like my favorite place to be. You know what I mean? From a spiritual perspective.
Gotcha. So you got another one, Linda?
Yeah, this will be my last one. What gives you hope?
Oh, I think honestly, the next generation. I have a lot of problems with them, not letting them off easy, but I think young people give me hope. I won't say too much more than that because I don't want to get political, but I think there are some extraordinarily conscientious, creative, empathetic young people growing up differently than we grew up and navigating a new world with greater sense of equality, with a greater sense of understanding, with more of a kind of a global vision instead of just a singular me. I think that Gen Z is more aware of their place in the world and the future than my generation. I'm in my 40s now, and Gen X, like, we're trying to get involved and fix things, but I feel like Gen Z is like, they're way ahead of where we were in that regard. Because I know when I was 15 or 16, I could give a hoot about politics,
That's great.
So I think young people are going to change this world, but maybe that's what everybody says. And
Okay, so to wrap it up, what's it going to say on your tombstone?
This is true, and I tell this to my boys every day, and it uses a little bit of a harsh word, so tune out. But I tell my students, my sons, I said, you have one rule: don't be a dick. That's it. That's the rule. And so I think my tombstone will say he wasn't a dick.
All right.
Be kind, So I think if it says something to the effect of like,
don't be a dick. I wasn't.
This dude wasn't a dick. It's not that hard. It's not.
Listen, we got to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here. This was very enjoyable.
Thank you, Linda, for what you're doing. Stanislaus Arts, Michelin Gallery, Linda behind the scenes, Linda Knoll. You guys are the backbone of the arts in this community, and thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here, Sam. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
It was a real pleasure. Okay.